The Lowe Post is brought to you by Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. How does 25-year-old two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo get drafted 15th overall in a weak draft class? Our own Adrian Wojnarowski investigates the twists and turns that led to a franchise and league-altering selection way back in 2013. A three-part series that tells this unique story, including interviews with individuals close to the process, as well as a one-on-one sit-down with Giannis himself. Check out the Woj Pod special, The Giannis Draft, wherever you find your podcasts.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Thursday morning on the East Coast where, let's see, we're through trade season. One trade has already fallen through under unprecedented, crazy circumstances. The draft is done. Free agency starts in 30 hours. Woo! I got a lot of coffee in the house. I got a lot of coffee in the system. Let's recap the draft for the second year in a row with our draft expert, Jonathan Givony, and our salary cap NBA insider, Bobby Marks. Good morning. Is everybody high on life?
I love life. There's nothing better. Let's go. Free agency right around the corner.
Literally right around the corner. Just right there. Givony, how are you? Do you feel a sense of emptiness in your soul the day after the draft? Do you wander around wondering what the next couple of days are going to be like? Are you already on to 2024?
I'm so relieved, to be honest with you. I was really nervous about how this is going to turn out. Somehow we ended up with the best mock draft, the most accurate mock draft I've ever done, which is shocking. I thought it was going to be a total disaster. And I'm just really excited not to have to talk about LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman, or Anthony Edwards anymore.
Did you have a drink at the Hilton Doubletree last night at 2 a.m. to celebrate your accurate mock draft? The Hilton Doubletree bar is the hottest spot within a 40-mile radius, probably. In Bristol,
everything closes at 10
now.
At
9:30.
So no.
Oh, that's right, the plague. I don't leave my horse, so I forgot that the plague is still here. Well, we have to start.
I did see Givony and Schmitz try to break into the bar last night at 2 a.m. Was that you or is that somebody else?
I was fiending for a drink. Thankfully, Nick Tutz came through. He had 2 beers in his fridge. We split them between the three of us. I got a couple of sips in, and then I passed out immediately. I was so tired.
I have a lot of follow-up questions that I'm going to keep to myself and move on with this podcast. We have to start at the top. The very biggest story of the day, the two biggest stories of the day really were not about the draft directly at all. And the biggest one is Klay Thompson's injury. We're recording this at 10:45 in the morning. We don't know if he's even gotten an MRI yet. We don't know what the specifics will be. We know there are fears that he has torn the Achilles in his right leg. I am praying that all the basketball gods should take care of Klay Thompson. He's a delight. He's an absolute baller. He's tough as shit. He has made so many big shots, and there are fewer moments cooler in the NBA than when Klay Thompson in a big playoff game shoots a three on the road. The crowd is petrified. You can hear this. There's a squeal. There's a like a terrified animal that senses its death. You can hear it from the crowd, that Klay Steph squeal, and he knows it. And he's already turning back up court. And then it goes in, and Klay, who's normally kind of even-keeled, gets the mean mug and the tough face and looks at the crowd. And, everybody loves Klay. He doesn't care about his numbers. He just wants to win. He plays defense. Doesn't care about his role. Doesn't care if he's the fourth option. Didn't care when they got KD. Just does his job every day and is completely fearless. And, even little things like the Warriors have tried to teach him to draw bogus fouls, pump fake and jump sideways into people and all that. And he's like, no, man, that's not basketball. I don't want to do that. And the Warriors coach is like, you get 8 free throws a game. He's like, no, I'm not doing that. Everybody loves Klay. If this is devastating, I just don't know what else to say. It changes the entire landscape of the NBA. It wipes away a championship contender. And it may permanently wipe away a championship contender because an ACL and an Achilles is a lot. But again, we don't know. I'm knocking on wood. I'm crossing my fingers and toes. And there's not much complicated analysis to this. He's under contract through 2024. The Warriors need him to contend. He's a beloved NBA player. And if this is what it turns out to be, it absolutely sucks. it did not really appear, and I'll start with you, Gavoni, it did not really appear to affect the top of the draft. Did you at the last minute think that the Warriors might pivot away from James Wiseman and do something else to compensate for whatever's going on with Clay?
I really thought there's a chance that they're going to go with LaMelo, because we kept hearing all along that LaMelo and Wiseman, it was close for them. There was definitely a contingent of their group that thought LaMelo Ball is going to be the best player in 5 years. Are we selling ourselves short here by taking a guy in James Wiseman who maybe we can go get a center in free agency to plug that hole? But I guess now you can't plug that hole in free agency with a center because you need to go get a wing. And so maybe that actually strengthened Wiseman's case, because they have the trade exception, $16-17 million. And so they have some tools now to go and get better. But, it could have gone either way. I thought I was really thinking, do we make the move? I was texting you 10 minutes before the pick. What are you hearing? And so, it ended up being Wiseman.
And I said Edwards-Wiseman. I was consistent all week long. It's going to be Edwards-Wiseman.
You nailed it, Zach. You should be the one doing the mock. Honestly.
No, I should not, because after pick 12, I'm like just learning names at that point. Just learning pronunciations, just learning names, positions, the whole deal. Bobby, real quickly, take us through the Warriors cap and tax situation now. How the trade exception is $17 million. What is that going to be in real dollars given their luxury tax situation? And what do you think the likelihood that they use all of it, some of it? Take us through that.
I think they'll use some of it. It expires on November 23rd, which is Monday. So there's a timing issue now, right, to that. If you use the whole amount, their luxury tax bill goes from 68 to 150 million. So it's basically a $90 million clip by adding a $17 million player. You're not going to be able to acquire a player in a sign-in trade, a free agent there, because of the hard cap. So you're restricted there. You do have your own first in 21 and 22. I would certainly not put the Minnesota pick out there at all. That's certainly a valuable trade chip as far as if you need to go out and get a player, and they've got 5 seconds, future seconds from other teams to add there. And they've got the $5.7 million tax mid-level. But this is not a good free agent class of guards. This is not a good, shooting guard. Joe Harris is going to be off the board. Bogdan is, he's a restricted free agent. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you're looking at trying to go get guys like Alec Burks, if in free agency, Justin Holiday, players. That's your market of guys, and you're going to be competing against a lot of other teams. So it's basically, how do we flush out the trade market to find a backup to Clay?
I do think they'll spend some or all of it, and we'll just have to see. I mean, there's just no overstating the severity, the ripple effects of any major injury to Klay Thompson. There's just it wipes a championship contender away. I mean, just prematurely before we even get to see him play. We haven't even seen him play since June 2019, which is just sucks, and it just really sucks. Let's pivot to Charlotte, because I absolutely loved what Charlotte did and how they handled their business. There were all these rumblings, and I think they were fair that, is Charlotte going to trade up to get James Wiseman? Charlotte has a hole at center, and they handled their business perfectly. They had talks with Minnesota about trading up. Minnesota wanted a ton, core young player, a couple of picks, whatever it was. And Charlotte was like, you know what? We're not going to just give up everything to fill a positional need, particularly if it looks like LaMelo Ball is going to fall to us. And I'm just so excited for Hornets fans, because they've just been in this purgatory of irrelevance for so long, and they're relevant again. Now, maybe LaMelo busts out, but they've just been aching for someone who could be the guy, someone who could galvanize their team, someone who could give it an identity. And they've gotten a shot at one, and they didn't give up anything. They didn't panic and overpay to move up to number 1 to get James Wiseman. And I think that was smart. On the flip side, I always was curious if Minnesota, at the end would just say, okay, we'll lower our price. Just give us Miles Bridges. We'll flip picks. We'll get something. And I think Minnesota was so hot for Anthony Edwards that they were like, we're a little bit scared if we trade down to 3. Maybe Golden State pivots and takes Anthony Edwards. So I think both teams played this right, but I'm especially excited for Charlotte. Givoni, you've been high on LaMelo this whole time. When did it become clear to you that this was going to be Charlotte's path? How do you think he fits with their team? And how do you think he fits with their team? Everyone's like, well, they have these 2 guards, Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, whatever. Like, those guys are fine. Charlotte can't be making any decisions because they have Terry Rozier and Devontae Graham on their team. They just have to pick a guy who they think is the best guy.
I mean, I said it on the last podcast. All this talk about LaMelo Ball, free falling, bad workouts, bad interviews, it was all nonsense. He was always going to be a top 3 pick. Charlotte decided very early on, this is a 3-player draft, and we're sitting at 3. We're going to take whichever guy from the 3 is there. They informed other guys, who were in consideration. Sorry, but we're going to move in a different direction. I mean, that's the kind of classy guy that Mitch Kupchak is. He's not going to leave you hanging in the wind, until, and sweating until the very last second. He's going to say, this is what I'm going to end up doing, which is very different than how a lot of the NBA these days operates, for better or worse. So, yeah, I mean, he was always going in the top 3. I think he preferred to go to Charlotte over Minnesota. I mean, that's a fact. I think he would have, slightly, would have rather be in Golden State right now. But he's very, very happy to end up in Charlotte. He's going to have the keys to the franchise right away. They're going to be globally relevant. They're going to be on TV nationally, I would think, fairly often. And it's going to be fun. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be some turnovers and bad shots and blown defensive assignments. But there's going to be a lot of magic, too, because this kid is special. I mean, he has it. And it really, I mean, what NBA GMs were telling me through the whole process is you don't find talent like LaMelo Ball. And all the, nonsense about his dad and all that, and he needs to work on his body and he needs to get, more consistent in the shooter. That's on us. That's not on him. Our job is to find talent and develop it, put these guys in the right situation, surround them with the right players, and develop them. And that's what Charlotte is going to do with LaMelo Ball right now.
I do think the interview concerns were real. Like, I had a bunch of teams tell me, I just something.
He's not a great interview, Zach. If you ever talk to him, he doesn't give you much. He's like a 1 or 2 word answer guy. He's incredibly relaxed. I mean, he's this happy-go-lucky guy. He doesn't have a care in the world, and yeah, you don't get a lot out of him in an interview. I mean, and so if that's a reason for him to free fall to 10, then I guess good luck with that,
Well, and I don't want to overstate the Charlotte excitement, right? Like, they've missed on a lot of picks. Okay, they turned Kemba Walker into Terry Rozier, who's fine. Terry Rozier actually had an underrated season for them. He's becoming one of those guys who people know as Terry Rozier's contract instead of Terry Rozier, like decent basketball player. But like Miles Bridges is a nice pick. PJ Washington is a nice pick. They're just gonna be good players. I don't want to get too excited. Like, I don't think either of those guys is gonna become a superstar, but they both look like guys, particularly Washington, who can play on a good team in 2 or 3 or 4 years, maybe even now, be some role player on a good team. LaMelo is the piece that's like, you just wanted him to swing for the fences, not that this is a swing for the fences, but it's their chance at some unifying force. And I just think they were smart to play it the way they did. On the other end of it, Minnesota keeps the number 1 pick. They take Anthony Edwards. And then they trade number 17 and James Johnson for number 25, number 28, and Ricky Rubio coming home to Minnesota. So there was all of this. I don't know LaMelo's game very well, but there was all this stuff about how, well, they have D'Angelo Russell, like LaMelo's not a good fit there, blah, blah, blah. So they take Anthony Edwards. He fits with D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns. Then they trade a lot of stuff for a point guard with a shaky jumper who earns $18 million in the next couple of years. So if LaMelo Ball is a bad fit there because D'Angelo Russell is the lead ball handler, why is Ricky Rubio a good fit there? This is not me criticizing the deals. I kind of see the rationale. Did that surprise you, Bobby, that they went for Rubio, or like what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me they went for Rubio. I mean, I knew that James Johnson contract was going to be flipped eventually, right? Of either at the draft or down the road. But I thought maybe more of a position of need, you know. And as you said, you get a guy that's got 2 years left that is on pretty good numbers, so that takes him out of free agency next off season. We'll see what happens with Malik Beasley and Juan Hernan Gomez, who are both restricted. I said last night the guy who had the worst night was Malik Beasley, right? Like, I mean, you had Anthony
because
Edwards
he doesn't have Minnesota over a barrel anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you got Anthony Edwards drafted, and then you had some off-court issues, during the last couple weeks here. But yeah, that did surprise me with with Rubio going there. Just that Minnesota was willing to take on that extra year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I actually it makes sense to me. Like, I actually like D'Angelo Russell in a hybrid role. I don't want D'Angelo Russell running 50, 60 pick and rolls a game. I like him moving around off the ball, coming off screens and taking handoffs, floating around. I like the idea of another ball handler with him. Ricky Rubio makes starter money. You get Ricky Rubio, you don't pay $18 million for a backup point guard. Ricky Rubio makes starter money, so it's going to be interesting how to use him. But I like the fit of D'Lo playing a little bit more off the ball. I know Karl Anthony Towns absolutely loves playing with Ricky. They want to play fast. Ricky will play fast. And he's just, for all his faults, and, everyone focuses on the jumper, and justifiably so, I think it puts a ceiling on how far you can get with Ricky Rubio playing 35 minutes a game. His teams are usually better when he's on the floor. He's a leader. He's a mentor to some of these young guys. I do think they'll still probably bring back Malik Beasley just because they traded that pick to get him in Wancho. So I think they'll bring him back. But Givony, were you what is the did you like the fit of LaMelo there? Fine, right? For the same reason that Rubio will be a decent fit there.
Yeah, I don't really think it was about the fit as much as keeping Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell happy, and that's what you kept hearing, that D'Angelo didn't want Lonzo with the Lakers, and he definitely did not want LaMelo with the Timberwolves. And so I don't know how much that played into Minnesota's thinking, but I'm sure he's a very happy man right now, And so that could have ended up being what put Edwards over the top there.
And I don't mind the Edwards Rubio double, because it's a way to thread the needle to me. The Edwards pick is the upside pick. The Edwards pick is, we're picking the guy who broke all the databases at P3 with his athleticism, and he plays the wing. We know all the questions about the IQ and the defense. We've heard the Dion Waiters 2.0. We've heard the Andrew Wiggins 2.0, which causes everybody within a 500-mile radius of Minneapolis to get the shakes. We've heard it all. We're taking the upside swing, and at the same time, we're making a very safe win-now play with Rubio, because we do owe that pick to Golden State. We have to at least be decent next year. We can't be bad again, because Carl's going to be angry about it. I think it's a decent enough way to thread the needle. It still surprised me a little bit, but I don't mind it. And the Edwards pick, I mean, I don't know enough about the guy's game, but I certainly get why they did it. And you had a mock number 1 at the end, right?
Yeah, we had the top 4, Okoro was the first surprise at 5.
At 5 to Cleveland. Yeah, the Pat Williams thing. Have you ever had a guy rise like this? What's the comp for just someone who went up the draft boards in the last month?
Well, how about before John? How about a guy that rises in a pandemic without any draft workouts, like going to visit all these places they had to come to you. I mean, that's kind of the rare thing there.
It's very interesting. I mean, Givony, does he, I know the big debate about him is he a 3 or a 4, or is he both? Obviously, that debate has special meaning for a team that has invested heavily in a 4 and a 5 in Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. Can he swing? Is he just a 4? Can he play some 3? What's your forecast?
I think early in his career, he's definitely a 4. People point to the defensive versatility as one of his greatest traits, but he had some bad moments at Florida State trying to guard the perimeter. He's not the quickest guy laterally, and he's not the most focused or naturally intense guy either. And so I do think, especially with his handle and his passing, his feel, which is still evolving, his shot. I think the 4 is going to be his natural position early on in his career. But it sounds like Chicago is all in on offense here, like compared to the last regime. And so I could see Lowry, seeing some minutes at the 5 and
they've played him there. They've played him there before. It hasn't worked.
Going crazy up tempo and just trying to score as many points as possible.
They still need a lead ball handler. Maybe they don't think they do because they're so high on Kobe White. Kobe White is still a shoot. He averaged like 5 assists a game down the stretch of the season. I think Kobe White had a legit nice last 30 games, proving maybe he's not just a chucker. Like he can hit off the dribble threes. But I'm not sold on him as, okay, you settle the offense and get us into stuff. Or Levine, I think, is proven to not be capable of that. He's okay as a secondary ball handler. Satoransky just hasn't found his footing in Chicago. So to me, and of course they didn't qualify Chris Dunn or Shaq Harrison. You don't fill that role anyway. I actually think we go overboard sort of fetishizing these NBA Twitter darling guys who, play bit roles on bad teams. Like I have hope for both of them. I love watching Shaq Harrison play, but like I'm not up in arms that Arturis didn't, give him a qualifying over Shaq Harrison. But they're a team that like I'm looking at the point guard market. I'm looking at New Orleans, who now has, I think, 5 nominal point guards on their roster. And wondering if there's kind of a deal to be made there. How surprised were you that the Hawks took Okongwu at 6?
Not surprised at all. I mean, that's where we had him in our mock, like for like the week or two prior, and all these ugly smoke screens about him falling, how his foot was messed up. That was disgusting in my opinion. And the Aaron Nesmith thing too. I mean, like, good Lord. And so I think Okongwu is a great fit, for Atlanta, like they're just a bad defensive team. And so you draft the most versatile defender, in the draft. I mean, it makes perfect sense. And, he can play with Collins, he can play with Capella, so there's a lot there.
Now, Bobby, this was also interesting to me because the Hawks have been linked pretty heavily with Danilo Gallinari in free agency. Yeah. It's hard to know exactly what's real with the Hawks because they're the cap room bonanza team. Every agent is linking their player to the Hawks as leverage. So the Hawks have been linked to, if you believe reports, the Hawks are spending about $400 million in free agency this summer when they don't have $400 million in cap room. But let's just say the Gallinari thing is real because to me, that's one of the realer ones. Like I think that actually has had some legit traction. They just drafted Okongwu. They traded for Clint Capella. It doesn't take a genius to wonder what's happening with John Collins. Like that's a guy that we should be keeping our eye on, right?
Yeah, and we'll know. I think we'll have a good idea. I mean, his extension deadline is December 21st. So there's a kind of we're on a 1 month clock here. They also got Dwayne Dedmon too, right? Another big. So what is I think if you put John Collins out there, Zach, I think he would have certainly high value, around the league here. I don't think he's going to get a max contract. I think what happens is that it's one way or another. Either you're a max guy like Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum will probably be off the board come November 20th, those type of guys. There's a reason the Bam Adebayo, you want to preserve cap space, or you want to get a team-friendly deal. And I think with Collins, you would probably want to try to get a team-friendly deal. And I think if you're his camp, you're going to hold off to restricted free agency next offseason. And that just kind of lingers on what his fate is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really interesting player to me because, it's tempting to pigeonhole him now as sort of needs to play the 5 on offense, can't play the 5 on defense. That's just what he is. And I get that. And his defense, I mean, he came on my podcast last year in Vegas and he was like, yeah, I just haven't been as focused as I need to be on defense. I thought he got a little bit better this season, even though that feels like 6 months ago now or 10 months ago or 2 years ago, whatever months ago it is. It's like hard to remember him on defense, but I do think he made some strides, particularly around the rim. Still has a long way to go. But man, he can do some special stuff on offense. He's become a good 3-point shooter, even decent above the break. He can take guys off the dribble. That would be an interesting. I mean, you could fit him in a lot of different places, but I'm not ready to sort of just write him off as all offense, no defense, has to play the five. Even though, I mean, that's sort of like a very different kind of player, but that's sort of what Julius Randle has become. That sort of similar archetype, a different, much different player. But that's a guy that I'm keeping my eye on. Let's turn to two of the biggest trades of the night. There were not a lot of big trades, but I thought Philly had a really interesting draft, starting with trading Al Horford to the Thunder, along with a 2025 first-round pick and number 34, I think, last night for Danny Green, and then Josh Richardson and number 36 to Dallas for Seth Curry. They are clearly just going all in on shooting. And what's really interesting to me is like those moves suggest, on one hand, that the new Daryl Morey regime is trying to make it work around Simmons and Embiid. That everything they've said about we're not in a rush to trade one of the big two, we're going to give it a go, James Harden be damned, whatever it is, that all of that is legitimate. And yet, you want to read it that way, but yet, if you had James Harden in Ben Simmons' place, you would still want to maximize shooting around James Harden and Joel Embiid. So I'm not sure either way, read it, how to read it. But Bobby's having some technical difficulties. He said Detroit tried to sneak in to the Horford thing. Gavoni, tell us about who Philly took at number 21, Maxey.
It's interesting because after Tyler Hero had that great playoff series with Miami, everybody said, well, this is going to really help Tyrese Maxey's draft stock. He's just another in a long line of Kentucky guards who, wasn't utilized to its full potential. And, he started the year in our top 10, and for him to drop all the way to 21 has to be a little bit disappointing for him. But not a great fit, honestly, with their roster because he shot like 29% for three last year. But he did appear to make some strides with his shot during the pre-draft process. We know how that can go sometimes. I mean, is it real or not? But really tough, physical, strong guard, good in pick and roll, pretty versatile defensively. Was like a top 5-7 high school recruit. I mean, there's a lot of upside there to work with long term. If he can, become a 35, 36% three-point shooter, he's going to be a big-time steal for Philly at 21.
Yeah, and I liked the Horford trade overall. I think that was fair value to get off Al's contract, and they got a very useful player in Danny Green. I mean, Danny Green's a good player still. I think he's in decline, but I think he can help them next year, and his contract is expiring. The first hurts, 2025 first, that hurts, but that's the price of doing business. And again, you get an asset back. Terrence Ferguson, we'll see if he contributes anything to their team. And now they have a potential starting lineup of Seth Curry, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Danny Green. And so that sort of mimics the most beloved lineup in Philadelphia 76ers process history, the Saric, Covington, Redick around the two stars lineup. I guess that sort of mimics that. I mean, Seth Curry is not just a good shooter. Seth Curry is an all-world, all-time great shooter, and he moves around. He's not quite Redick-y the way he moved, like that two-man game with Embiid. I think will take some time for him to sort of master the steps of that, but he's a really good shooter. I also think he's a peskier defender than people give him credit for. He competes. I mean, he's not big. He's going to get picked on a little bit because of his size, but he competes. He's got good feet. He's quick, and he has a real knack for the ball. He's smart about reading passing lanes. He baits people into throwing passes, and then he steals them. I think he's a little underrated defensively, not quite the liability that people make him out to be. Beyond that, Philly's a little thin. Okay, then you get into the Matisse Thybulle, Zaire Smith, some rookies. Korkmaz is in there. Mike Scott is still hanging around, but they were a little thin before. I think given the price, those are decent trades for them. Now, Givoni, they did give up. I mean, the price for Seth Curry was high. Let's not sugarcoat it. Like, Josh Richardson is still a good NBA player. He did not fit well in Philly. He looked kind of just laggard all season. Like, he looked slower. He looked constricted. He didn't take enough threes. His defense remained as advertised. 36 is an important pick. That's a good pick. Those high 30s picks are good. But Josh Richardson's on his expiring contract, and Seth Curry has 3 years left on a great contract, paying about $8 million a pop. So again, that's the price. of doing business. Gavoni, I heard Dallas was up to a lot last night, trying to offer 18, 31, and something else. I'm not sure if it was a player or a pick to everyone from like 7 to 10 to 11. And I'm pretty sure the target was Halliburton. They were hot on Halliburton, and they were offering all these picks to try to move up and get Halliburton. They didn't get him, but this is a team to me to watch. And they also made some picks last night. Tyrell Terry fell to them at 31, right? Is that the home run everyone is making it out to be?
I don't think so. I think there were better guards drafted behind him. I like Nico Mannion, I like Cassius Winston, but Dallas was super active all week long. Apparently they finished second in the Robert Covington sweepstakes. I think that Portland 2021 first rounder ended up putting them over the top with that deal.
Heard the same.
And then Halliburton, they were 100% trying to get him. Starting at 8, they offered like you said, a boatload of stuff and future picks even to try and go get him. People are like, how did Halliburton fall so far? How did Avdia fall so far? A lot of this was by design. Like the consistent theme that I kept hearing in the pre-draft process from agents was, I hate the teams that are drafting in the top 10. I don't want my guys with any of those franchises. And so they were very selective with who got medicals, and they were openly telling teams, don't take my guy, please. So I think that is a big reason why Halliburton ended up going 12. He could have gone 6, I think, had he wanted to, but he, was open to, let me sacrifice $7-8 million because I think it's going to end up working out for me in the long term with Sacramento. And Jack, how many times can you say a player wants to go to Sacramento? It's incredible.
I knew exactly where you were going when you said how many times. I knew it was, but like, it's a great pick for them. I mean, Pelton had him rated like the number 2 prospect in the entire draft. He probably fits well next to De'Aaron Fox. I really like that pick for them. Yeah, so the draft got a little crazy starting at 5, and Denny Avdia slips all the way to Washington. I've watched some film of his game. He seems interesting. Some people in the league tell me they think he's going to be a bust. You were pretty high on him, right? Like you think Washington should be excited about getting him at 9?
Very high. I think they should be thrilled to get him. He's going to come in and play big minutes for them right away. He needs the green light to be able to develop his playmaking ability. He's a big guard. He can really pass. And if he can, just become a little bit more dynamic with his handle and with his pull-up jumper, he's going to be, one of the top 3 or 4 players in this draft class. So I think he's thrilled to go 9. That was a place that, he had targeted very early on in the process. And so I love the draft that Washington had, getting Cassius Winston at 53. I mean, I had him at like 25 on my board. They're very excited about Cassius too. He's going to end up, he's going to be their backup point guard next year. So great draft for the Wizards.
That's nice to hear for the Wizards. That's nice to hear. Let's talk about Detroit, because I don't know if any team was as active as Detroit. And Bobby Marks just mentioned that they were in talks to absorb Al Horford. They ended up absorbing Trevor Ariza in order to acquire the 16th pick in exchange for a protected future first that is so damn protected. A, they might not be able to trade a first for a while because it's protected for so many years. And B, it's unclear what Houston really got in exchange for that number 16 pick. And then I think in my favorite trade of the night, Brooklyn, the Clippers, and the Pistons exchanged some stuff. And so Brooklyn sent the number 19 pick to Detroit. Detroit sent Luke Kennard to the Clippers, and the Clippers sent Landry Shamet to Brooklyn. And there may be some second-round picks involved going around here as well. That's a really, really interesting trade to me. Detroit, obviously, they tried to trade Kennard at the deadline last year. I think for a pick they hoped would be higher than this. They didn't get any takers. They just don't want to pay him. He's eligible for an extension now. They don't want to pay him, so they got the 19th pick. They took a guy we can talk about later. And then what's really interesting to me is Brooklyn clearly just all you have to do is read this trade. They could have just traded 19 for Kennard. They didn't want Luke Kennard. They looked around the league and said, who do we want better? Who do we like better that fits? they're like, you know what? Landry Shamet. They effectively chose Landry Shamet over Luke Kennard, and the Clippers effectively chose Luke Kennard over Landry Shamet. It's kind of a challenge trade indirectly between the Clippers and the Nets. I think it's really, really interesting. Any angle you want, start on that trade, Gavoni. What strikes you as interesting?
I was confused with the draft that Detroit had, to be honest with you. I mean, we talked about Killian Hayes in our last podcast. I mean, how wide of a range he had. We talked about how Chicago liked him at 4, Detroit liked him at 7, and then it wasn't clear if he really had a home after that until possibly 15 with Orlando. So for Detroit to pass on Halliburton, take Killian Hayes at 7, I think, Killian Hayes needs the ball. He's the guy who feels most comfortable, being the center of the show. And so that's good for him in that regard. I think things are going to get a little bit ugly next year in terms of efficiency, shooting percentage, all that.
Which is all normal. That's normal for young point
exactly.
guards.
Then, taking Isaiah Stewart at 16 over Precious Achiuwa, I thought I was a little bit confused by that. I really like the Sadiq Bey move, getting him at 19.
People like that kid.
Yeah, he could have easily gotten the lottery, so that's a good move. Saban Lee at 38 on a 2-way, confuses me a little bit. If you like him so much, don't you just make him the backup point guard? You're not going to win anyway next year, but I guess he'll play a lot, even on a 2-way. They eliminated the restrictions. Most people didn't have Saban Lee getting drafted, so 38, that was a minor surprise, but yeah, sorry, I went totally off track there. It wasn't what you're asking me at all about.
No, that's okay, because I don't know these players. It helps me to learn some more about these players. I know the NBA guys, and so to me, the Shamet Kennard thing was really interesting. Kennard is like the sexier player. Like, he can run some pick and roll. He had one monster playoff series when Detroit got destroyed by the Bucks in 4 straight games. But like, he's got some feel. He's a lefty. Everybody likes lefties. If you're a lefty, you're like 10% more popular in life just by virtue. Are you a lefty, Gavoni?
I'm not a lefty, no.
I'm not a lefty either. My sister's a lefty. Didn't really help her.
Killian Hayes is a lefty.
That's right. Didn't really help her popularity, though, my sister. But people like lefties. And, like, he has more juices. Like, you can give him the ball and he can create stuff. He's a decent passer. Shamet can do a little, like, Duncan Robinson-y secondary ball handling, like one dribble move and all that, one dribble pass to the roller.
He's a better fit with KD and Kyrie and potentially Harden. So, it makes perfect sense for them. And then they got Reggie Perry at 57. And that's a good pick. People were a little bit scared about him attitude-wise. He played a little bit selfishly at Mississippi State, and he's a little bit of a rough dude. But he that guy can play. He's athletic. He's got scoring instincts. He was a big-time player in the SEC as a sophomore, and I think if there weren't the concerns about, what kind of dude is he, like, he goes in the 20s. So for them to get him at the end of the second round, he could end up, being a sneaky guy that, plays some kind of, especially if they have to gut their roster, you're going to need guys who can play. And so he can give you 10, 15 minutes.
You nailed it regarding Shamet. I think that's just a fit play for Brooklyn. Doesn't need the ball, killer shooter. Will draw a lot of attention roving around, can set screens because of his on-ball screens because of his gravity as a shooter and the way defenses have to pay attention to him. I think that's just a fit play. Obviously, he's 1 year behind Kennard on the calendar toward getting paid. I think that's important for Brooklyn. And I'm really interested to see what the Clippers think they have in Kennard, whether he's sort of their 6th, 7th guy, come off the bench, handle it a little bit more, how it affects Lou Williams in that role.
Is he healthy? Is this trade going to go through? That's the first thing we got to ask.
So I've heard that he feels good and he's healthy. Now, for what that's worth, who knows? We'll see if the trade. I'm assuming the trade will go through, and I'm interested to see what the Clippers think they have in him, because it's clearly a little bit of a talent play in terms of he just has maybe a little bit more traditional upside than Shamet, and let's take, because they love Shamet. The Clippers love Shamet. They drool all over themselves talking about how good lucky they are to have pried Shamet away from Philadelphia in the Tobias Harris trade. He was one of the major pieces that they wanted. They got him. They loved him. He competed in that Golden State series that they lost 4-2 in the first round a couple seasons ago, like better than they thought he would, I think, defensively. For him to give for them to give him up for a player who's a year sooner to get paid, they must love Luke Kennard. And I am just really fascinated to see sort of where they go with it. But, they have a lot of interesting decisions to make this summer. But I thought that was a very, very interesting and telling trade. Who else should we hit? Who else had an interesting night? Who did you love that we haven't hit? What's a team that Phoenix, again, did the thing that Phoenix does, which is like they reached, right, for this Jalen Smith kid.
Yeah, they locked in on him early, and they were told Halliburton's coming your way. Get ready, and they said, "Nah, we're good. We already have our guy." And so, I think I don't think that was a great move. I think Halliburton's going to end up being a much more versatile and valuable player. I mean, you can find a stretch four. Is Jalen Smith even a stretch four? Like, can he actually guard power forwards? I mean, they call him Sticks. He's very upright. He's very narrow. He really struggles to move laterally on the perimeter. He can block shots. He plays hard. He was an awesome interview. He shot it great in all his workouts, and so he really moved up quickly up the board. But I just think that I think there was more value there. With Halliburton and maybe even Vassell. They're at 11, who the Spurs got. Other drafts that I like. Miami getting Precious Achiuwa at
and boy, has Miami earned the benefit of the doubt drafting in the late lottery or in the just past the late lottery. Like this, they've earned the and by the way, James Jones earns a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because everyone laughed at the Cam Johnson pick last year, and Cam Johnson's a good player. But Miami, the minute they make a pick, they got him at 20. So just after the lottery, I'm like, you know what?
I had him 12th on my board, and this guy is a freak athlete. He's one of the best defenders in the draft. He plays incredibly hard. He was just a freshman. He was the only freshman in college basketball to be freshman of the year and player of the year in his conference. And, I know you don't want to go off workout videos too much, but his stroke looked good. Like I talked to a team that was drafting right behind Miami. And when we put out that workout video, they're like, holy crap, this guy looks like the number one pick in the draft. Like he might end up going in the top 10 off that one video alone. But no, it's not. Teams don't draft off workout videos, and they shouldn't. But I really like Precious Achiuwa, and, I think he's got major upside. He needs to figure out, what his position is. He's probably going to play behind Bam. Can they play together? Probably not in the near term, but, as his shooting evolves, hopefully, yes. And so, I love the value there for them.
And I think you liked Denver, right? Like Denver taking Zeke at 22 and then RJ Hampton at 24, trading a future lottery protected first to get into 24. I mean, that's a talent play, right? And like that Tim Connolly has done a great job being like, we're set. We're a really good team. We can be patient with, from Michael Porter to Bol to RJ Hampton. I think I think those are worthy moves. And Zeke Naji, is that how I say his last name?
Yes.
People are reading into what does drafting a big mean for Denver's offseason plans. I'm not sure I would read into it that much. A team as good as Denver, I don't think necessarily drafts a rookie at 22 being like he's playing 20 minutes a game in the playoffs. I still think they're going to pay Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant will come back. This is just my prediction. I'm not reporting it. It's my prediction. I think Millsap will be interesting. Millsap, I think, is going to have a little more interest in free agency based on teams I've talked to than I expected, given how creaky he looked at the start of the bubble. Now he perked up in the Clippers series and somewhat in the Lakers series, but in the Jazz series he looked awful. But I think he's going to draw some interest. So I'm like 70-30 he's not on the Nuggets next year, maybe 60-40. Plumlee, we'll see what his market is. He just is coming off a big contract, and you don't pay that kind of money to play 10 minutes a game in the playoffs backing up Jokic. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. So I don't necessarily read too much into that. But you like Hampton as another Tim Connolly talent play, right?
Yeah, he started the year top 5 on our board. People haven't seen him in over a year. He's a ways away physically. He's a ways away maturity-wise. He's a ways away toughness-wise. But this guy is a talent. He gets anywhere he wants in the court. He's kind of, I think, 2 or 3 years down the road, he could be like a Spencer Dinwiddie type for them, and they traded a lottery protected future first rounder from him. So obviously they valued him quite a bit. You could see on the broadcast that he was not happy to drop to 24. There were some unhappy campers in that living room. But I like RJ Hampton's talent, and I feel like if you would have flipped him with Killian Hayes and put him in a situation where winning doesn't matter, and just here's the ball, go do whatever you want, and I think he would have been a top 10 pick. And so, good for Denver to get that kind of talent at 24. That's what they do. They've done it year after year.
What do you think of Boston's draft, Neesmith and Peyton Pritchard? And then, in an outcome, it's hard not to come out of this from Boston's perspective, unless you love those players and you can tell me more about them, feeling a little disappointed because they couldn't trade up and they couldn't use all their picks because they have so many guys already rostered. So they end up trading 30 for 2 seconds, I think, to Memphis. And Memphis takes Desmond Bane, who is the internet's favorite player in the whole draft. So Memphis immediately wins the draft. It's got to hurt a little bit. Now, maybe one thing I'll say about Danny Ainge, he's not afraid to have contrarian opinions and go out of the box and go against conventional wisdom. He may think Desmond Bane's like totally overrated. Doesn't matter to him that Desmond Bane's there at 30. It's just got to hurt a little bit to trade that pick away and not be able to move up. But, they did come away with Aaron Neesmith and Peyton Pritchard. So tell me about them and what you think of Boston's draft.
Well, it just shows you it's a microcosm of how the draft overall went. No picks traded in the top 12. And then there just wasn't that much of a market for that 14th pick. I mean, I think they were dying to get off it, but they just couldn't find the right trade. And what they were hoping would happen was somebody would slide to 14 that another team had 8th or 9th on their board, and they would, put a 2021 first rounder and go get it. But that just didn't end up materializing. And so I like Peyton Pritchard. I think he's tough. He can shoot. I mean, he's ready to play right away. He's a Danny Ainge type player. And then, Neesmith is one of the best shooters in the draft. So, I think it makes sense what they did there. But yeah, there was a lot of balls up in the air. You kept hearing about, all these guys that are on their roster that are in different trade conversations. And, I don't want, the aggregators to go crazy here, but there was a lot of talk about things that they were up to the week or two before the draft, and none of it happened.
And I will have to say, there always is with every team. I think Boston is they're kind of like what Houston was when Darryl was there. They make a lot of calls. They explore. What an offer is like this maddening game of semantics in the NBA. Like, was it actually offered? Was it talked about? Was it offered? Was it not talked about? What did they talk about? Was it offered? Was it on paper? Was it not on paper? Was it in an email? Was it on an answering machine? It's like it's hard to know what's real, but they make a lot of calls because they're curious and exploratory and aggressive. And so all this stuff comes out, and stuff comes out as having been quote unquote offered, that even you call the team that they quote unquote offered it to, and this is not just for Boston, this is for lots of teams. And they're like, yeah, I'm not really sure it was an offer. Like, we were just kind of talking. Like, it's not like, it's just having conversations. And so, there was a lot of buzz about the Bulls trading up. I don't really think that was ever, I don't really think that there was ever much traction there. I'm not really sure it was real, to be honest with you, but they clearly targeted their guy at number 4.
We could have both spent the entire week of the draft just tweeting out rumors hour after hour, getting thousands of likes and retweets because there was so much stuff, being thrown against the wall. But nothing happens in the end. And so you just have to be really careful with all these rumors.
Well, and the thing that, and also reconstructing reconstructing unconsummated Boston trades has become like my least favorite part of the job over the last 5 years. It's like, who offered what, when, what was offered? It's just like, enough. I can't do it anymore. Like the Drew Holiday thing, I'm like, I'm out. I don't even want to know. I don't care. It didn't happen. And I'm not poking fun at the Celtics because, frankly, I think they have been pretty aggressive. Like, everyone makes fun of Danny for not making trades. Danny offered 4 first-round picks to try and draft Justice Winslow. He's come close on some trades, not on others. And frankly, his reticence, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are really freaking good. I think the jury is still out on whether holding on to them was as ridiculous as people made it sound at the time. It's just frustrating to reconstruct unconsummated trades. Tell me, please, because I don't know anything about him, about the international man of mystery, that everybody knew Oklahoma City was picking at 17 the second that Oklahoma City got the 17th pick. Alexei Pokusevsky, is that right?
You got it. Nailed it.
Someone described him as a 7-foot guard.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, he can dribble. He can.
I'm
pass,
in. I don't need to know any. I don't need to know anymore.
He averages
I'm
like 2 blocks
in.
and 2 steals and a bunch of rebounds. And he, like, theoretically, he's the greatest player of all time. You know, like, if he honestly, like, his upside is top 5 in this draft. But, you know, there's so many question marks about him. How is his frame going to fill out? Is he going to stay healthy? He missed a lot of time this year with different injuries. You know, he's got a body type that may or may not hold up. All these NBA teams were asking. His brother, you know, he quit when he was 20, and, you know, like, he's got one leg longer than the other. And it was one of the great stories of this draft, Alexei Pokusevsky. And everybody knew Oklahoma City wanted him. And they kept telling all these, you know, they started messing with people and saying, well, we'll send the medical, and we're not going to send the medical. And then they started begging people, please don't draft him. And they said, we're going to draft him. And that's why they had to move up to 17. And they're bringing him over right away. And they're bringing Teo Maledon over right away. And it's going to be awesome. You know, like Oklahoma City Blue. That's going to be must-watch TV. Let's get that on ESPN.
They're bringing him over right away?
They have to. That was the deal. You know, I mean, a lot of teams like them, but they're like, he's 18 years old, and he's a beanpole, and he's 3 years away from.
Get them all out. Get Gallinari out. Get Adams out. Who else is there still? Get them all out. Bring this guy up. I want to see him. Trade all the veterans. Keep going. Keep trading everybody. Bring Pokusevsky up. I want to see the guy play. I'm so excited. This is what you can do when you have 17 first-round picks in the next 7 drafts or 6 drafts or whatever it is. Take a flyer. I mean,
if it doesn't work, who cares? You know, it's just another failed first-round pick. Half of these guys don't pan out anyway, so you may as well just take a swing.
This is what Toronto did with Bruno Caboclo, and it didn't work. And, you know, they reached a little bit, but, like, you know, sometimes you reach and you don't hit, and sometimes you reach and you hit. And if you have the infrastructure that gives you the luxury of doing that, I don't think it's such a bad thing. Well, now you have me very excited. This is really exciting. Let's see if there's any other team I wanted to hit you on before we go. Okoro at 5. Sell me on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a freak athlete. I love Okoro. I remember I came on the podcast. I said LaMelo 1, Onyeka 2, Okoro 3. So people were like, he doesn't have a floor. We're not exactly sure where he's going to go. Does he get to 11? And then Cleveland said, "Yeah, we're going to take him at 5." You know, and I actually I love this pick because they were such a bad team defensively last year, and they draft this guy that can guard point guards. He can guard power forwards. He can guard wings. He's got a great body. He's a terrific athlete. He's a winner. He just does all the little things, and I think he has a lot of upside as a ball handler, as a passer. You know, any guy that you love, you say he's going to end up being a good shooter in time. We'll see. I mean, he was not a good shooter last year, and that's why he, you know, wasn't this consensus top 5 guy. But I love Isaac Okoro, and I think it's a great pick for Cleveland.
Well, now we look ahead to free agency, which teams can begin negotiating tomorrow at 6 p.m. It will be interesting to see if the Bucks and the Kings and Bogdanovich's people can resuscitate that sign and trade. Gordon Hayward has his player option deadline in 6 hours and change, 5 hours and change rather. That's going to be a very interesting thing, and will set us up for what promises to be, I don't know how wild it'll be. I mean, this free agency class is not amazing, and Detroit, I think, is telegraphed that they're not going to be an aggressive cap space team. They don't even have all that much cap space left once you count Christian Wood's cap hold and some other stuff. But, you just never know with the NBA. You never know. You can't go to sleep. Jonathan Givony, I hope you can go to sleep for a little while. Thank you for your help on the draft. Congratulations on a successful mock draft. Pray to the draft gods that can continue next season. And one final fingers crossed, toes crossed for Klay Thompson, because this just can't be. So, Jonathan, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.